Marhaba, and welcome to the Matrix Green Pill, where real people connect.
Hello, and welcome back to the Matrix Green Pill podcast. My name is Melvin, and I'm sure you're going to love this guest like I do. Allow me to introduce you guys to the stunning, inspiring, and one of India's greatest Olympians and top hockey star, Naaz Shah. Naaz, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Totally my pleasure, Melvin. Thank you for having me on the show.
So it's very difficult to give an introduction to Naaz that does not take up all of my 20 minutes. So here is a short version. Naaz is the recipient of the Shri Chhatrapati Award and has represented India at the Olympics, World Championship, and Asian Games. She has won gold medals at the Asian Games and Asian Championships and has previously held the post of the president of the Women's Hockey Association of Maharashtra. She has worn many hats, including entrepreneur, sportswoman, volunteer, and administrator, and is now currently coaching at Hamilton Boys School, Hamilton, New Zealand. The rest of her inspiring story and milestones we will uncover during our podcast. So, Naaz, let me begin. You were part of the Indian team that won the Asian Championship in 1981 and the Asian Games in 82. Tell us about that experience, what you felt, and what your first reaction was.
So first of all, I think it was, I was really young, 19. For me, I think being still kind of a teenager and having this opportunity to represent India again at the Asian Championship in Japan was an amazing experience. I knew that it was going to be kind of a selection process for the 1982 Asian Games, which were in Delhi. So there was a bit of nervousness, but I knew that this was the start of the selection process and I really had to perform at my best. It was an amazing competition. Obviously, we did win gold. I think I grew as a person because they needed a certain amount of maturity to be able to play at that level with that kind of pressure. 82 was a dream. To play in front of 25,000 of your home crowd. And playing left wing was even more amazing because you could actually hear the crowd 5 meters away. And every time you got the ball, they started chanting your name. I feel that's about 40 years since that happened. But for me, it feels like it was just yesterday.
Oh, yeah, that must have been a real high, right? Hearing people chant your name at your home country. And so, if I look at it, you then went on to captain India in 83 and 84 in Russia and China. That must have felt special, obviously. So, a couple of questions here. How did you motivate your team? And what are the qualities that made you such a great captain?
First of all, I must thank you for calling me a great captain. To be honest, I think it was an amazing honor. When they announced that I was going to be the captain, it was a moment of, oh my gosh, is this really happening? Is this for real that a country of 1 billion plus people will now look at me to lead the country to victory? On the other side, I felt the elation of having finally been able to achieve one of my dreams. And for me, I think the big thing was to lead the team by example. You have to walk the talk if you want your team to work with you. You have to care about everybody in the team, and your strength is taking care of the weakest link. The big issue for us in India is that our players come from all over the country, and sometimes things like language, food, all these things play a part. And if we can keep that all together, we can create a winning combination. So those were some of the things that I paid particular attention to make sure that every person felt valued in the team, whether you were a newbie or whether you were an experienced player in the team. I think that was the key to success, that valuing a person, I think, and making them feel part of the whole process is between winning or having 16 champions who are individuals or 16 players who play for their country and have one single purpose, and that is to win.
Awesome. So delving deeper into that, so you had Selma, Rajbir, and you formed a fearsome trio up front for India. So any memories that stand out from that partnership?
Oh, I can tell you, honestly, we kind of knew each other's game, that if you put us on the turf or the pitch or whatever you want to call it, in our sleep, and you said, go and play, we'd be able to do our moves without even thinking about it. And I think both Rajbir and Selma were amazing athletes in terms of their understanding of the game. And so to work together in a combination, and you have to remember that we'd started playing together as a team in 81. We'd been in the team in like 80. Rajbir wasn't there, but Selma was. And then in 81, we kind of really created a strong bond, but that bond went off the field as well. So we were really good mates. We had each other's back. And I think that showed itself when we actually went onto the turf. We have to look after each other. We've got to do our best. And, when people think like that, it's difficult to break that combination.
Going back to the part where you made your debut for India at 16 and you were an Olympian, if I'm not mistaken, at 17. I mean, not many people can boast of that. That must have made you feel really proud.
Actually, they hadn't announced the team to the players. I was standing at Kayani Bakery, the iconic Kayani Bakery in Pune. Yeah, and I was standing with my coach and somebody brought the newspaper and said, yeah, hey, listen, what? You made the team and you're going to the World Championship. I was like, oh my gosh, really? Is it me? Have you read the name right? I was too scared to look at the paper in case that guy had made a mistake. And I said, no, look at it again, show it to me again. And then I thought, man, I'm 16. Am I actually going to be playing with all these stars, Geeta Serene, and all these who were iconic and, the people that I followed and I walked with and I used to dream that one day I would wear the Indian blazer. And I thought, now is my opportunity that I'm going to the World Championship, 16 years of age, and I really have to prove that I deserve my place in that team. So it was amazing. And then the Olympics was like the absolute icing on the cake. The Olympic Games, most athletes dream of it, that one day I will be an Olympian. All of us strive to play for India and, quite a few of us will reach that goal. But to actually get to the Olympic Games, it was like, so I'm going to the Olympics. And I had to sit down and I had to actually absorb the whole thing, that this is real. And I had to pinch myself to tell myself, yeah, you are actually going to the Olympic Games and going to be in the company of the greatest athletes in the world. And it was such a huge motivation for me then to train even harder to really prove that I deserve to be on that team.
Did you give yourself a treat and have something from Kani, like some Shrewsbury biscuits or a choco walnut cake?
Actually, Noshir uncle, who was the owner of the bakery, he gave me a big hug and he said, look, what do you want to eat? And I was thinking, the athlete in me says I shouldn't be eating all this sugary kind of food. But I said, you know what? Today's celebration time. The small mawa cakes that you got there. So I had a mawa cake and I remember I had a cream roll, gorged myself with all that food and say, all right, the party is over, the work begins.
Some amazing things about you is that you played for India after getting married and after having a child. I mean, that must have been pretty uncommon at that time.
Melvin, if you know me well enough, you know that I'm a bit of a rebel. And when I got married, I knew I was only halfway in my career. And I knew I still had to finish the job that I had begun. Also know that it was a Hindu-Muslim marriage. That by itself was enough to raise eyebrows. And then I thought, hey, you know what? If the Europeans can do it, why can't we? Why is it that in India, we have this mindset that once you're married, you've got to stay at home, you've got to have kids, your life ends there. So I thought, hey, let's take this as a challenge. Let's do it. And maybe I can set something up for other athletes who are thinking about it and are too scared to take that first step. Let's take that step. Let's see what the repercussions are. And I knew that socially it would be quite difficult because when I'm kind of started playing after I got married, I know that people raised eyebrows. They were too scared to ask me why. But from the expressions, I knew they were asking me that question. I had the support of my family. And I think that was the most important thing, that the support of your family and the people who matter to you, that should be your concern. If they are the ones who are going to give you the heads up and say, go for it, then I don't really care about what everyone says. Because if you have to live by what people are going to say to you, I think you're never going to get through it, anything you do in your life. There will always be people who are jealous. There will always be people who think it's not good enough. Honestly, once I started and, I started training, it wasn't an easy job. I was really pleased that I did it. And today I see in India, there are heaps of young girls who get married and continue with their careers. So once I achieved that milestone, my son Manav was born. The federation wrote to me and said, we're having 3 big tournaments and do you think you can make a comeback? By that time, I hadn't played 3 years for India. And in an athlete's career, 3 years is a very, very long time.
Yeah, that's almost like the death knell at that time, I'm guessing.
Totally. So. It's like, why even waste your time going back? Because one, I was competing with girls who were easily 8 to 10 years younger than me. Socially, it became, oh my God, now what? What is she trying to do? Who is her godfather? Why is she making a comeback? Are there any ulterior motives? So there was a lot in the press. There was a lot socially, but I wanted to break this barrier. And I said, look, if everyone else in this world can do it, why is it that we as Indians think we are not good enough? So again, I must say it was the support of my family that I had the courage. It wasn't an easy road. Physically, it was really, really taxing. On a mental level, there was a certain amount of guilt that I was, leaving my son at home and going to these long coaching camps and whatever. In hindsight, I think I'm glad I did it. Because today in India, you see girls who are married with families are still playing at the highest levels. So though it wasn't an easy task, I'm so pleased that I had the courage. And I can say that my friends and my family were my support and gave me the courage to take that step.
I think we are all very proud of you. Growing up, you were always one of the icons we grew up around. So one question, while I think you paved the path for a lot of other women, the one question on my mind was always, how did you manage to keep up with like a fitness regime? Because I've always seen you just like a sports person, just like the way you were during your playing days throughout our childhood. So was there like a special sort of diet or a fitness regime that you followed?
Actually, I've been right from when I was young, I've been really particular about the kind of food I eat because a huge part of who you are is what you put into your system. So for me, things like liquor, drugs, smoking, any of that was absolutely nowhere on the horizon. But on a food front, I thought you have to eat well and you have to eat the right foods to be an athlete. It was really, really difficult on a fitness level to get back to that level of fitness that is required at an international level. I think your food and your discipline to stick to what you believe in and not to be carried away. Because it's quite easy to be carried away. People will say things like, oh, just do it once, it won't matter. Normally you don't do it. But the thing is to have the discipline and the self-belief that you can stick to your guns and still go to a party, not drink, and still have a fabulous time. And that was my mantra. And I used to tell my friends, I get high on good friendships, on having a good time, laughing and talking. I don't need liquor. And I think if we have that discipline and self-belief that we can do it, then it actually isn't as hard as people make it to be.
You've continued with that fitness right up to now, and I understand you're currently coaching the Hamilton Boys School in New Zealand. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yes, it's interesting. I actually, Hockey New Zealand sponsored my visa to come to New Zealand on a sport talent category because they wanted me to work with them just at maybe grassroots level, maybe at a higher level, whatever, to introduce even the Asian style of playing and to do a bit of coaching because I did tick off all the boxes that are required to come on that sport talent category. And then at Hamilton Boys High School, here sport is, there is no payment for coaches. Everything is done on a voluntary basis. And more than that is because you're passionate about your sport. So my job basically is I'm a teacher. So I teach, but I coach because I'm passionate about coaching and I enjoy coaching. And so I've coached, at all levels from 5-year-olds to senior teams, including the under-18 New Zealand women's team. I was part of their team coach approach. So I've done, coaching at all levels. I've coached boys and girls. But I must tell you, Melvin, that I do have a sense of regret sometimes that I could have done this in India. So still would like to coach in India because I feel, when my athletes, quite a few of the boys I've coached have gone on to play for New Zealand. We always have a joke and I tell them, look, if you play for India, you're not allowed to score against them. And, they have a laugh and said, oh, miss, but you're a Kiwi now. So you can't bat for India. Now you're part of us. So it's this always sitting on the fence. And then I say, all right, it doesn't matter really whether you guys win or whether India wins, I'm still on the winning team. So, we always have this kind of thing. And quite a few of the young men that I've coached and a few of the young women that I've coached have continued to play for New Zealand. When they were in school, they were in the academy that we have in the school. We have a elite sports academy in the school, and they come to us year 9 and year 10. Going to Tokyo now, Nick Woods. So he was a little fellow in year 8 who came to me when I was running my own coaching clinics. And then he came to Boys High, the school I coach in year 9, and he was part of the team that I took to tournament and we won. But I do miss the kids I coached in India as well. And I hope that in the future, I will be able to coach in India too.
I recollect you were the one who introduced us to hockey with the coaching camp that you conducted.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that was a while ago, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I remember quite a few girls made at least the Maharashtra team. Tina was one of them. Obviously, there were quite a few, but under you who got selected, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now in New Zealand, you also work as a refugee coordinator at the school. What does that role entail?
Yeah, so I have a lot of empathy for these people because I know that coming to New Zealand as a migrant, having language as an advantage and, having traveled the world, so it wasn't such a big shock to my system. Refugees coming from countries like Somalia, Congo, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Syria. What happens? The government takes, obviously all countries take refugees. So in New Zealand, we take refugees as well. And then they are sent to different parts of the country where they have their similar groups living in the same area. So it's easier for them to adjust. So at our school, we have 38 refugee boys who come from, the names of the countries that I just told you a little while ago. What we do is we help them to adjust not only within the school, but within the social framework of this country, because when they come into New Zealand, they are no longer refugees, they are now New Zealand residents. My role as a refugee coordinator is to welcome them into the school, to help them to get set within the school system, to find buddies for them who speak their language, to help them talk to the teachers, to help the teachers to understand the trauma that these young men have faced, and to be able to help them in their journey to become part of the social fabric in New Zealand. So it is a very, very difficult job, but it is an extremely satisfying job that 1 year later, the young man can come and talk to you, have a conversation, and we support them in different ways. So I run a center within the school. We have classes after school, and most of these kids love their sport, and they are extremely good footballers and wrestlers. We encourage them to play the sport. We, find money to pay for their fees so that they can play football. So a big event that I do, Melvin, is we celebrate World Refugee Week in our school, and we have World Refugee Day. On that day, we have a big football game where the whole school comes to watch, and it's a selected former refugee team versus a selected school team, and all the other groups within the school. Like we have a lot of students who are Pacifica-based, like from the islands around us. So they come with their drums and, they sing and they dance. So it's like a big festival. And what we're trying to give is to give these young former refugee students some kind of status, some kind of feeling that they belong to New Zealand. Honestly, it is one of the most satisfying events in my year where I can see these young men walking 6 inches off the ground because it is their day. And we have a big aftermatch and there's lots of food and celebration and a trophy. And it's like, a big international event on a school level. And, we have lots of invitees. So for me, being a refugee coordinator, the big thing is to give these boys the best opportunity to be the best that they can be.
You've also done a fair bit of volunteering at major events. I hear you even met the New Zealand Premier.
Yes.
How was that?
Oh, so I was at the Commonwealth Games in 2018 at the Gold Coast, and I was with the New Zealand women's team and standing in their dugout. So after the final whistle blew, there's no security issues and all like we have in India. So the Prime Minister, she just came into the dugout to meet all the players and give them a hug. So I just went and shook hands with her and said, I'm from New Zealand. I'm looking after the women's team here. And I said, Madam Prime Minister, could we have a photo? And she just put her arms around me and she said, oh, for sure. And then somebody just took a photo. It is as simple as that. And I was thinking, okay, so I'm standing next to the Prime Minister of my country New Zealand. She's putting her arm around me and saying, yeah, let's take a photo. This is how simple life is here. I couldn't believe it. And then when I actually showed people, they said, oh, so now, you're hanging out with the Prime Minister of New Zealand. And I said, well, if you volunteer and you give back to the sport, these are the perks that come with it. So it was really, really cool.
Naz, I'm just going to go back to the beginning, okay? Because I think we're quite intrigued by it because you chose hockey as a career at a time when sports in India, especially hockey, was not necessarily a coveted sport. And women's hockey didn't certainly provide a lucrative long-term career. And given your background, it must have been a difficult choice. So how did you end up choosing hockey?
Oh, so this is a really, really heartwarming story, I must tell you. So my aunt, Serena Madraswala, she played for India in 1952. She was the first women's captain of hockey in India. So I think, and my family was a sporty family, though we were my grandmother was Orthodox Bohri Muslim, but she was well ahead of her times and she realized that boys and girls should be given equal opportunities. So my aunt and all my three aunts continued to play sport. My aunt who played hockey became a doctor. The other aunt became a painter. The other aunt became a nurse. Though my grandmother was Orthodox, she was also ahead of her times in the sense, she said, well, why shouldn't my girls play? Because my aunt played, my father was really determined that I should continue to play hockey. But the special thing about this, my aunt's coach, Minu Golakari, he was also my coach. So he gave his life for hockey. And for 40 years, he coached women's hockey. And so when my father said, my daughter wants to play hockey, he said, yeah, send her to me. I will make her an international player. And as a 6-year-old, I remember I was about 6 or 7, and my father took me and he said, okay, here she is. And I remember him taking me to the St. Mary's ground. And at that time, he gave me the hockey ball and he said, yeah, so this is how you hold a hockey stick. This is what you do with the ball. And this is how you need to play hockey. And I remember much later in my life, he told me, I said to him, oh, this ball is so hard. I don't want to play hockey. I don't think I want to play a sport where I will get hurt. And my father was there as well. And he said, nah, you will be playing hockey because give it a go and you probably will see how good it is. But once I started playing, I absolutely loved it. And I was fortunate to play for Maharashtra at a time where we had many international players, Ottilia Mascarenas, Geeta Sareen. We had all these stalwarts. And I remember walking behind them when we went to training, when they wore their India jackets. And I used to, just walk behind them and I used to dream of one day I'm going to wear that jacket. And that used to be my motivation day in, day out. My dream, every waking moment, because you have to have your eyes open when you dream. Otherwise, the dream will never become a reality. So for me, I think Minu Golakari, he's never been recognized for his contribution to women's hockey and hockey in general. And I think a large part of who I am today was thanks to his dedication and his hard work with me.
He was a role model to you.
Yeah.
You are a role model to a lot of aspiring hockey players. What advice would you give them?
I have only one piece of advice. Believe in yourself. You know what I tell a lot of my students, that use each stumbling block, if you want to call it that, or you can use it in a phrase or as a belief that you have a stone, whether you want to use it as a stepping stone to success or whether you see it as a stumbling block. So every failure of us, every failure you face, you have to decide whether you're going to use that as a stumbling block or you are going to use it as stepping stones to success. So if you look, it's your attitude and your self-belief. If these two things can be mastered, if you have the courage to go beyond, then anything that you look at and anything you want to succeed in, success will be part of your journey.
Wise words, Naz. Now, coming to your kids, Manav and Saloni, both are into sports. How do they feel about having a hockey star as a mom?
I don't think they even realize that.
That's hard to believe.
Yeah, well, they've seen me this for so long. And I'm sure, quietly, I think they do feel a sense of pride. We really don't ever talk about it. I feel awkward when people say, oh, your mom's an international player and all. And I think they get a bit embarrassed and I get totally embarrassed because that's not who I am.
Oh, come on. We are all so proud of you and having grown up around an international Olympian star. I mean, it's a dream come true for a lot of us.
Yeah, I think, quietly they are proud. I must say, I'm sure quietly they are proud, but we don't make a big deal of it. And I'm glad that I have people around you who say these things because I feel happy about it, that if I can inspire young people to go beyond what they think they're capable of in whatever field they choose, then I think it's in a way service to the society and to the community.
So with that, we've come to the end of that segment, and we now begin another exciting segment of our show where we're going to ask you a few rapid fire questions.
Sure.
Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Your favorite sportsman and sportswoman?
Serena Williams. And sportsman, I kind of like Sachin Tendulkar.
Both of you made a debut at a very young age, so I can see that you'll have that in common.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of similarities. Yeah.
Now, this is a tricky one. Preeta or Hamilton, New Zealand? What feels more like home?
Oh, you've really put me on the spot, haven't you? So I'm actually torn between the two because Preet apartment are my early memories and the fabulous people that I lived with. It was family for me. And even when my kids were born and whose house they were, who was looking after them, who was feeding them, all the kids in my house playing on the terrace, having a fabulous time. And I do miss it terribly. There are times when I just think, what am I doing here? I miss everyone so desperately. All the Diwali functions, all the Ganpati functions, all the fancy dresses that you kids used to dress up with, all the singing and dancing, riding your bikes, playing till your parents are screaming, horse, come home. You got school tomorrow and nobody is going back to their home. All those thoughts make me so nostalgic and, I have tears in my eyes.
So Preet Apartments it is.
Yeah. And I come back to Hamilton and, I've kind of made this home because I've made some wonderful friends here. Kids here respect me for who I am. People respect me for who I am. So, yeah, I am torn between the two worlds.
Okay, so we'll just call it a tie at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, next question. Name your favorite author.
Author. Oh, my goodness. So I'm one who reads fiction. And I like all the action ones where there are spies. And so Chris Ryan, Sidney Sheldon, those kind of authors.
Okay. And your favorite hockey team besides India?
Well, I'll go with the Black Sticks.
Okay, that was fairly
I better
easy.
be loyal.
Favorite sport beside hockey?
Athletics.
And last question. If you won the lottery, one country you would visit that you haven't already?
I want to go to Greenland. I want to go to the Antarctica and I want to do one of those cruises there. So that's definitely on my bucket list. I've been close enough to the Antarctica. Now I want to go to the Arctic.
Now, before we wrap up, we would like to do a green pill moment. So just like in the Matrix, you have the blue pill and the red pill. We have the green pill, which kind of is the pill you take and you realize things that you haven't realized before. So what green pill advice would you give to your younger self?
Yeah, that's a good question. To be financially independent before you adventure or you take on anything serious in your life, whether it's marriage, whether it's travel, whether it's anything else. If that was one thing I would have told myself was be in a situation where you are financially independent, because I think being financially independent is a key factor to a lot of things that could go right or wrong in your life.
Words to heed, Naz, words to heed. So thank you so much for being here today and inspiring so many of us. We have enjoyed hearing your very personal and incredible journey. And I'm sure many more women will take up hockey without considering either marriage or childbirth as an obstacle. So before we say our goodbyes, could you share with us your social media handles? Where can people find you?
So I'm not a social media person, but Instagram and Facebook to some extent. But the one that I use the most is WhatsApp. Definitely available on Instagram and on Facebook.
So we shall share those links. And Naz, thank you once again for joining us today. And we wish you all the very best with all your future endeavors.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's been a pleasure talking to you. And I look forward to talking to you again.
If If you enjoy our conversations, please like and subscribe. See you next Wednesday.